Hey folks, welcome back to the Joe Silverback Show. I'm your host, Joe Bunton, and I'm in studio today with my middle son, Eli Bunton, who's actually going to be the host of the program. So without much further ado, Eli, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I brainstormed and put together a few notes. I've been filling up this notepad since you and I have been talking beforehand, so I brought a few things that I wanted to ask you. But first and foremost, I wouldn't say my whole childhood, but you've been bringing up the word and nickname that you've given yourself pretty much, and the talk of your show, the Silverback. And some of my close friends know it, I know it, but tell me just a little bit in detail what the Silverback means to you and why you've pretty much dedicated your life and name to your own self as the Silverback.
Yeah, good question. First, let me just tell you there's a little bit of a trickster in me, so I might share some aspects of the Silverback with you that I don't share with somebody else. So
Careful.
Just keep that in mind.
Okay.
So the Silverback represents primate certainty. I first was introduced to the concept of the Silverback from my mentor Martin, and he asked me if there was an appeal, if it appealed to me to learn more about the Silverback, and instinctively there was an appeal to it. And I can't tell you when I was your age. I was actually, how old are you?
24.
You're 24. So I was 24 when Martin and I met, and he was 75. And one of the first questions that he asked me, one of the first questions that he asked me was, what are your plans for the next 50 years of your life? And like you and Dave and I were talking in the canyon yesterday, I was like a lot of young people, and I had no clue. And I said that to him. I said, I don't know what my plans are for the next 50 minutes.
Right.
And he said, well, you should. And I argued with him, like most young guys argue with the older Silverbacks. And the more that he and I talked about the Silverback, the more that I understood that what he was getting at, and what now I want to share with my audience, and what I've shared with you kids growing up, is that the Silverback doesn't have any doubt about who he is or what he is, where he's going, what his purpose is. And you can, no matter what your religious beliefs, no matter what your philosophical beliefs, political beliefs, in civilized society today, there's a lot of just general confusion.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a young man? What does it mean to, what do I want to do with my life? So the concept of the Silverback that appeals to me the most is the idea of being clear on who we are as men. And my background in philosophy and literature and humanities was pretty classical, where the know thyself concept was coming up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's know thyself. If you just focus in on those two words, know thyself, you could say that all spiritual practices, all meditation, stem from the principle of self-awareness. The Silverback is there. He's self-aware. So the second thing about the Silverback that is extremely powerful to me is that he's non-aggressive, meaning he's not going around looking for trouble. He hangs out eating his leaves and his fruits and making sure that his his tribe is with him, his troop, and there's a gentleness in his nature that we miss if we get into this idea that, oh, he's this animal that's this destroyer, this mythology that's been created around something uncivilized as a gorilla.
A beastly animal that,
a beast. The beast is always something that we've mythologized as something dangerous, and that's really because we're the most dangerous animal there is.
Yeah.
But the silverback is not only has this gentle nature and this tenderness, and you could see it in his eyes, but at the same time, he's fierce. He's fierce as a protector. So, like I was telling you guys the other day, one of the images that has never left me is this idea that if a lion is attacking, the silverback is the first to his feet to defend everybody.
Right.
And if you imagine a tiger that could tear you apart with one swipe, and his head could put your head inside his jaws, and that silverback can catch a tiger in mid-pounce and snap his neck. Mm-hmm. So what is this incredible, powerful, yet also very compassionate animal have to instruct us? And I think as men, he has a lot to instruct us.
Okay. So you're a beastly creature only when you're poked at, but when all else is
when provoked,
leaving you alone, you're just doing your thing.
As long as you're not interfering with his territory.
Yeah.
And we know that territory is, one of the biggest primate concerns. It's the biggest of any big mammal concerned. What is a given territory, and what is respect for a given territory, and how do we create space in that given territory, and how do we let others inhabit that space, and that's a very tricky thing to navigate for humans.
Okay, you led me straight to my next question. So I don't know how long it's been, maybe a month and a half since I've been kind of going over some of your writings, and obviously I've lived the life that you write about and have taken a lot of your observations from and put on paper. Speaking about territory here on the ocean front and raising us kids on the ocean front is...
Yeah, maybe we should tell the audience just a little bit about that.
Okay.
So I'm in Mission Beach, and my mentor, when I was first with Eli's mother, before we started having children, suggested that I live on the ocean front where the air is fresh.
Here?
Yeah.
In Mission Beach?
Yes.
Okay.
And
was there ever an option that it could be anywhere but Mission Beach? Or was it just...
Yes and no. Yes and no. He had found... He was an asthmatic as a child, and he
What's an asthmatic? Sorry.
They can't breathe well.
Right.
So he found, after doing a lot of research, he started studying about health and tried to help himself find a way to healing, because he was supposed to die very young. Long story short, he found that he could, like a lot of asthmatics, that if they're close to the ocean, the negative ions help them breathe better. And so when we first met, he said to me, if you love Corinne, that Corinne is Eli's mother and the mother of my 4 children, he said, you'll live on the ocean front where the air is freshest. And even though I argued with him, instinctively I knew there was something to what he was saying, and it wasn't just about fresh air. So anyway, that's just a little background. So your question is, how did I end up here?
Not so much how did you end up here, but we were speaking about territory, and my childhood was pretty much, I would say, if not 100%, 99.9% different than any of my friends or anyone I really knew. I grew up homeschooled. I grew up on the beach. I grew up without microwaves in the house. I grew up without a dishwasher. I grew up without a TV, a computer, a cell phone. I didn't know what technology was probably until I was 13, 14 years old. I mean, my friends, I played on a soccer team, so I obviously saw it here and there, but that is pretty radically different than with what we grew up. So speaking about territory, was this your territory? Was creating this lifestyle your territory, or was being in nature your territory? How did that play a role into?
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if it came, I don't know if it came from Martin or if it came from my own thoughts or my other readings, but somehow what Martin did was helped me learn that setting a pattern for what I wanted in my life was critical. And by that I mean the question that he always asked me to ask myself is, how is it done in nature? And how can we bring more nature into our lives, and how can we bring ourselves more into nature? So the other idea you were kind of mentioning, I think you were mentioning Abraham Hicks. I think that's his name. What the law of attraction?
Yes.
So I grew up with some of these concepts, the law of attraction, and one of the things that fast became very clear to me is that we are the center of our own universe, each and every human being. So some people, for example, center their universe around their Italian Catholic upbringing, and Catholicism is the center of their universe, and almost everything that they do has some connection to that. Now, you might have one or two or three centers of your universe. So if you look at living, myself living on the oceanfront for the last 30 years, following an old wise man's idea of spending as much time close to nature as possible. So what I did when I decided I wanted to be a writer, and your mother and I started having children, and boom, 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 we were having, you kids came pretty quickly. I would go walking or running in the morning early while you guys were still asleep, do some exercises, go in the ocean, and then sit at the seashore and write for 2 hours. And that sitting at the seashore, and if you draw on the image of the silverback, imagine the silverback being the center of his tribe. So I was really also identified with this idea of the silverback and a man being the leader of the family. And for me, since I wasn't connected to a particular religion where I was going to church every Sunday, nature became my church, so to speak. And it also became the center of the universe, where when you kids would wake up, not only would you come check, around Papa, and hang out with him, but you would start your day connected to those negative ions on the beach and the sun and the sea and all the elements of the seashore. And when she wasn't concerned with making food and cleaning the house and I could get her down there, I also, it was a force to bring your mother and I down to the seashore together so that we could have more nature time as a couple.
Okay.
So So that deals with the seashore aspect, but you were also asking me some questions about technology, or are you kind of...
No, that answered it perfectly, because that is a conversation you and I did have just the other day, where you're talking about being the center of your universe wherever it is, and that's a perfect description.
Yes, and sorry for interrupting, but if you know, and if I had to live where my mom's house is, then the canyon that we were in yesterday, that I grew up in, that would be the center of my universe.
Right.
And if I had to live in New York, maybe Central Park is going to be the center of my universe.
Right. So you're making the center of your universe
some place that's as close to wild nature as I can get.
This is cool, because now I'm learning things about you when you raised us that I didn't even know yet. So, speaking of being kind of as an outcast, we realistically were an outcast. I mean,
outlier. It's a better word.
Outlier. Okay, an outlier. My formal interaction with kids and other people in a formal way was through soccer, because I never went to an educational institution like preschool, middle school, high school, anything like that. So while you were raising a family the way that you have on the beach, homeschooled, naturally, no technology, and organic, and when I say organic, I mean we made our own cheese, we didn't have pasteurized milk, I didn't even know what salt was in butter until I was like 14 years old. So as an outlier, like you said, did that play any role in you feeling like, well, shit, I can't really bring my family to do other things with other people because I didn't want them to be associated with that? Or did you always feel grounded, like you were at the center of your universe all the time? Did you have that in the back of your head ever, that maybe it would be even a judgment from other parents or people that looked into your life, into our life from a different perspective? Did that ever phase you or get to you? Did you ever think about it?
Wow. Well, yes, of course. You know, I had to answer that in a couple different ways. First of all, I would say that outliers are outliers, and they know who they are, and they're just usually born that way, or something happens along their route that hits them so hard that they realize that, you know, they can't follow the prescription that society is creating for them. Mm-hmm. So I would have to say, looking back on my life, you know, I came in as an outlier, and I don't really know where that's from unless you really get into, you know, the nature of the soul, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of being an outlier as somebody who's a 24-year-old single male like yourself, and myself being
I have a girlfriend.
Sorry.
Shit.
A single, very well spoken for 24. Sorry. Not yet. Okay.
I know what you're saying.
As a single, unfamilied male at 24.
Right.
Where most of the time, if society's going to say anything to you, it's as you as just an adult male. When you have children, everybody, you get under another microscope.
Okay.
You get under the social microscope that usually entails, but not exclusive to, but usually is dominated by other mothers who are scared shitless if what you're doing somehow is too threatening to what they believe.
Doing?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the social consciousness, and I'm not blaming women. I mean, women are more of the social organizers in society, typically, and so they're more focused on the details of those things, with kids going to school, et cetera, and that doesn't mean that men don't play a big role and are playing more of a role, but again, I don't want to get into that debate yet.
Right.
But when you have a child, even the state claims territorial rights over censoring and possibly interfering in what's best for that child. So the most common theme, now you're 24, so if you go back and your brother's 29, if you go back 30 years, the concept of homeschooling and home education, the big byline, the big buzzword was, what's going to happen? How is your kid going to get properly socialized?
Okay, I gotta stop you then
Yeah.
just for a second, because I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've been asked. When I tell people, oh, I was homeschooled, it's almost like, oh, what? You're not weird. Like, how are you not weird, almost? Mm-hmm. And I've been asked that for verbatim, word for word. Oh, like, what? You're so normal. And there's this, I don't even know if stigma is the right word around being homeschooled, that you're kind of a sheltered, weird person. And I grew up so completely different than most people that I actually came out on the other side, in my opinion, more on top of being able to be in touch with just having a conversation or talking to an adult or talking to a person that is my age or having a dialogue with somebody, because I wasn't, I don't know because I never went to a school, but I guess in a system where it was like, raise your hand if you want to talk. You know, you told me the other day on the phone, I used to just run up to people and pull on their arm when I was 8, 9 years old and say, hey, you know, what are you doing? Tell me about it. So I was used to that. And growing up being homeschooled, and then now looking at it when I'm 24 and I have conversations with people, they're like, oh, wow, you're not weird. I would have never expected that. And
yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, like a lot of things, there's multiple sides to the coin, and homeschooling evolved in this country predominantly out of very specific Christian groups that did not want a non-Christian viewpoint being taught to their kids in the public schools. So if you look at the homeschool movement, and you would say today, in the broader scope of secular education, non-religious education, that especially in California, for anybody who's, you know, coming out of that genre of home education, they're going to think that they've got a narrow lens, meaning that these parents are, you know, narrowly over-focused on religion with their kids, and therefore this sense of these kids are weird and they're different. But it's, you know, it's not too different than, you know, if you were religious Jew in this country, you know, going back, you know, 50 years, or if you're Amish. I mean, you're a minority. You're a minority group that somehow the larger you know, social group is not quite familiar with. Now you can go anywhere and people can say, you know, I want a kosher meal. I mean, you can go anywhere now and say, I want a vegan meal. You can go anywhere now and say, I want a raw zebra.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know what you're saying.
But that's yeah. So in terms of the weirdness, that's one aspect. The second thing is that, like a lot of things, where you're an outlier, where you're outside the societal norms, and definitely home education is outside of that, even though there's so much positive traction over, you know, 5 decades or you're bringing into question to a lot of people, why am I, who, if they were really to ask themselves, that you're really bringing into question, well, why am I putting my kid in public schools? Why am I not doing that, right? And instead of just saying, well, this is why I've chosen to do this, it's a human nature to go on the attack and find something wrong with the other. So in answer to your question, I mean, not millions, but hundreds of disconcerted parents asking those questions because they don't really know exactly, well, if your kid's not getting what my kid's getting, what is your kid getting?
Yeah.
Am I answering your question, or?
I mean, I don't think you can answer it. It's just, you touched on it, but I mean, it's not even really a question. It's, I guess, just bringing it up, and I was just saying, it is funny because you said now as I'm a 24-year-old man looking back on the way that we were raised, when I do look back on it now, I mean, this is the first time in my life that you and I are having these conversations in a more in-depth verbal way, because now I'm starting to say, oh, okay, I went through it, now I want to know why I went through that experience or why you wanted to go through it. So it's more of just me saying I recognize this now and then wanting to know a little bit more about it. But I know you're going to be pissed at me. I got to go to the bathroom.
Oh, no problem.
I'll be right back.
No problem. I do too.
One of the questions that I did jot down, like I said, I wanted to make sure I got at least 3 or 4 main questions that I asked you, because, and this one's kind of more for me, but it's from your perspective. So, do you notice, I'm sure you do notice a change, but what change do you notice in, let's just say me, because I'm the only one of your children who's gone through college and completed it. Do you notice a significant change from the day that I was born until I was 18 years old when I went off to New York and went to school, until right now, before you and I really started connecting on similar interests that we have and conversations that we have? Do you notice a disconnect that I had from the way that I was raised as I left your home and went off into school and did my own thing and lived on my own and lived with my own friends and just basically left your home? What was the disconnect, if you notice any? Mm-hmm. And can you kind of tell it back to me so I can...
Do you want me to tell that, or do you want to answer
No,
that?
I want you to answer it so I can hear it from your perspective. I just started answering it. That'll lead me to another question, but I started doing it through some self-reflection, but I want to know what your opinion is.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's you know, when a child leaves home, we know as parents, even though we know it just here, and then we start to experience it in here, that you know, our son or our daughter is going to be finding himself or herself for the first time outside of our domain, our ideas, our concepts.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of a given for anybody, that they're going to go off and test and explore and experiment and experience life for the first time without their parents' input on it. So that's kind of a normal. In terms of the way you guys were raised, I think maybe what you're asking me is like, okay, so there's a few themes that I had in my life that were really critical. Nature was one of them, and so technology is another one, and an organic, holistic lifestyle is a third. So I think to answer your question, I would have to look at all 3 of those and say, okay, how is this child of mine, who is his own person now, going to experience nature in his life? Is nature going how and so of course there's changes. I mean, you guys, like you said, you guys grew up without TV and without a computer and without cell phones, but by the time you were late teens, you were already getting all of that stuff and starting to connect in that realm. And now, when you move off on your own, I'd say the technology is one of the biggest things, because that's very generational.
Yeah.
And I have to deal with how that pulls on me as an individual, and you have to deal with that on your own. And there's not a whole lot a parent can do in that particular situation. So I'd say that just watching this obsession with technology that your generation went through, that was a big concern.
Mm-hmm.
But not until you broached that with me recently did I have a understanding from your own psycho-emotional, intellectual, visceral experience what that was like.
Shit, man, I need my dictionary to pay attention to all those words you just said.
I know.
But okay, so
technology is one thing, and we could talk about that.
Okay, so you might have, you did touch on it, but that is I guess what I was trying to ask you with my question. It was, what did you notice a disconnect? I shouldn't have said leaving your home. Of course, when I leave your home, I'm going to change. I'm freely on my own doing what I want. Of course, I will. You'll see change, and I saw change in myself. But let's just stick to the technology. As
Sure.
I spent more time being on my own and making my own decisions, I fell into, well, not really fell into, I used technology, and whether it was social media or just in general, did you see a disconnect in the way that I was able to communicate and talk and the way that I was raised?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So one of the things that happened was that your energy changed. You were never able to be calm and just have a conversation, and you couldn't sit still. Now you have a personality. When was
I'm never called? During the 6-7 years where I left your home and I was using, like...
Yeah, like when
okay, because that's very important for me to realize, because now I feel calm again, and it's only a month and a half after I've taken all social media and pushed it outside of my life, deleted it, and said, okay, I'm not going to do that. And I feel a certain calmness. I feel my attention span. First of all, I haven't developed in so many years. I feel it now going, oh, okay, this is what it means to sit here and not do this. I was on a flight yesterday. Just this knee bopping thing. There's a guy on a flight next to me, and I know flying's nervous, but this is what I would do all the time, like talking to somebody, thinking. It's this unconscious anxiety that I felt that I had all the time that I don't think a lot of people talk about, because it's just always there. And I was only able to recognize it in the last month or two of, oh my God, I'm able to just be present right here and not think, let me check and see what's going on here, and here, and here. Because multitasking, I mean, I'm sure you know this, you can't multitask. It's just scientifically proven that the mind can only focus on one thing actually at a time. I don't know if I phrased that right, but you get what I'm saying. And so when I'm checking things, like I told you, you used to call me, and it's quite embarrassing, but you used to call me, and I would put you on speakerphone, laying down in my bed, and I'd be like scrolling through Instagram.
Oh, how funny.
Just thinking, okay, talking to you, but realistically, I wasn't really talking to you. You were talking to me, and I was giving acknowledgement to you every other second, saying, I can hear you, but I wasn't listening. And so that's where I've seen the biggest, I guess, downfall, disconnect that I've had is this. Being able to be present, 100% present.
So how did you come to recognize that? And how did you come to even recognize it in a way that you wanted to do something different?
Yeah, that's a better question,
And I think that kind of answers your question about the way you were raised, because I think that we do we go through all kinds of cycles in life, and we do have to have something in our life that's grounding. And I think that you had a very grounded childhood that's centered around family, you know, and your time with your siblings and your cousins at the seashore every single day. So my guess is that even though you are now describing something that had a pull on you and has a pull on you, and now there's this sense of self-reflection that's going, hey, how much do I want this really controlling my life versus being in control of my life? You know, to me, that is an exciting moment as a parent and just as a human being who spends a lot of time thinking about the theme of, you know, nature versus civilization, nature versus technology. How do we balance and have something that we can consider harmony and stability and balance in a world that is getting pulled further and further into what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important for you to, you know, share that with the audience, what your own personal experience was. So I can share with the audience that, you know, what Eli's trying to bring up is that he was always so preoccupied he couldn't really have a in-depth conversation with me because his mind was already on so many other things that it was distracting him. And one day he calls me up and tells me about an experience, and I would like you to share that experience. Because for me, in my own work, in my own writing, and obviously with my own family, it's exciting to have younger generations start to look at, you know, what is it that at the end of the day we really want in our lives, and how do we balance that with the things that are pulling us from some of the things that are important that you're starting to experience.
Yeah. That's also another thing that I just was thinking about, is taking a step back from social media. And I think there's so many toxic things about social media, but I also now I'm able to view it as there's a lot of great things about social media.
Yeah, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah, it's not always bad. I think I used it, and most people use it in a way that we weren't aware of, the way that it was ripping apart. I mean, I've heard someone else say this. I think it was the social fabric that you build with somebody. Social media is making you so connected all the time with everybody that you're therefore that disconnected all the time, because you think, I got 500 people that can see what I'm doing at any given time. That's awesome. They all know what I'm doing. But then when you're in front of them and you go to explain, hey, guess what I was doing? They're like, I know, I saw your story. And then therefore you had immediately just wiped out all of the conversation. And I realized that when I tell somebody a story, if nobody knows what I'm telling them, I just hope that they can experience 1/10 of the joy that I felt going through an experience of me telling them that story. I want to tell you something, and I want you to think, wow, I'm going to feel 1/10 of what Eli felt during his experience, because I'm that excited to tell you, right? But if I don't do that verbally, you're just seeing it from a perspective of, hey, this is what I'm doing, and it eliminates all of what you and I are doing right here, a human-to-human connection. And so I'll get back to what got me to actually delete my social media for the first time pretty much ever, the last, 6-7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I even forgot that. You deleted it.
Well, even there, I didn't actually delete it. I just deleted the apps. I could still download it.
Got it.
I just, for the first time, because I've deleted my apps for 3 days.
That's another thing. Some things you can't get rid of.
Yeah, so I've deleted my apps before, and then I would re-download them. But this is now, I don't know, a month and a half. I've stuck to it. But anyway, it was Saturday. I got in my car, and I was feeling more disconnected than I had ever felt. And I got in my car, I live up in the Bay Area, and you know that, or anyone else. And I drove down to Big Sur, just down on the Pacific Coast Highway. And I did that because I knew in my mind that's what I like to do when I just am like, fuck everything, I need to go get away and clear my head, just headspace, whatever you want to call that. And so I got in the car and I was doing it and I was like, okay, I can't actually experience this unless I turn off my phone. And so I turned off my phone maybe halfway into the drive because I was listening to music, I was putting on podcasts, and nothing was doing it for me. When I go to work and I'm traveling 20 or 30 minutes, that's okay. I'm filling my mind with something I want to listen to. But then about an hour into the drive, I had no...
Oh, hold on. Let me freeze frame that.
Okay.
So you're saying that you're driving and normally you would put on a podcast or music to relax, and that wasn't doing it? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say relax. There's a certain educational things that I like to listen to if I'm going to my business, or if I'm going to a client's house, or whatever it is I'm doing. But that's usually a 15 to 30 minute span of time, right? So in my mind, not enough time for me to connect, I guess, with myself or think about thinking. So on this long drive, I turned off podcast, music. I turned my phone off, like just completely off. And I was just driving, and I started like a crazy person. I was just talking to myself. And it sounds weird, but I'm not talking in my mind, talking to myself. I was verbally talking to myself out loud. And from a different perspective, if somebody was driving past me in the car, I'm talking to myself. They'd probably go, oh, he's talking on the phone or to speaker somebody. So I'm like, oh, wow, this is weird, you know? And then I started thinking, well, why is this weird? Is this weird? Or is this normal? Is this what I should be doing? And, you know, fast forward another hour, I'm down on the coast in Big Sur, and it's raining and it's beautiful. And I'm going to reach for my phone to like go like this and Snapchat it and Instagram it. And then
while you're at the coast,
while I'm at the coast doing something for myself that I'm like, I need to do for myself. And I didn't post anything. And then in there, I thought, whoa, what am I doing? Who am I trying to show? And it's always kind of, I've downloaded and deleted Instagram here and there, but never to the point that I felt there. So I deleted those and I said, okay, I'm going to experience this for myself. And I did take probably 50 different little snippet videos.
So let me, can I stop you right there for a second? Okay, so right there you're saying that you caught yourself wanting to be alone and have some alone time and do something for Eli, and then you caught yourself doing it for an audience. Is that what you're saying?
But I mean, that's the thing. I don't know who I was doing it for. Was I doing it so that other people could feel the joy that I felt, like I said, with telling a story? Mm-hmm. If so, I think that's a great reason to do anything. You and I have talked about sharing a message on YouTube or whatever it is. That's a great way to use social media. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know why I was doing it. I had no clear understanding.
Okay, so let me ask another question. So are you saying that it was an unconscious behavior that you became conscious of? You're just saying, I was doing something unconsciously, and then I go, wait a minute, I want to be more conscious of what I'm doing. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, so that's precisely what it was. It became this is so normal. It's something that I just do. Just like walking or breathing, you don't sit there and go, how am I putting one foot in front of the other, right?
Right.
But if you really stopped and took a second to realize it, you'd be like, oh, why am I doing this? So that's where I got to with posting with my social media. And then I started realizing, okay, you know, once I came home, I deleted it, and I started realizing after 2 days or 3 days, that was my feeling. I wanted you to see that. I would go like this and pick up my phone and look at it for a second and then go, I don't really know what I'm picking up my phone, right? Yeah. So I was going on and off, and it was...
So let me stop you right there, because I think all of us have had this experience where feeling anxiety without this thing. So this like this, it's like what I'm understanding you saying, and what I've experienced in my own life, and what I hear other people saying is that I have to check on this thing all the time.
Yeah.
So that in itself is creating some sense of anxiety in us. Like without it, we're lost.
Yeah.
And I know, I do know some people, including myself, who have spent, a lot of time purposefully putting that stuff aside. And one of the things that, one of the things that excited me the most, tying into what you said about how you were raised, is having you as my son call me and say, hey, I'm doing self-reflection, and I'm realizing that I'm not having meaningful conversations with people I care about because I'm so sucked into something that is like, I don't know, like my baby blanket or something like that.
Well, I mean, and it's probably way harder for you to even grasp what I'm saying. And I also think that until somebody does delete all of their social media, it's hard for them to even understand it from the different perspective. Because I always, like I said, I thought about it and I was like, this is probably not the best thing, because now you can check on your phone. I mean, I would spend 4 hours out of a 24-hour day on whether it was Instagram or Snapchat, all of that social media. I mean, if you take that and expand it 10 or 20 years, you're eliminating 2 to 4 years of your life just staring at a phone. And so you really...
So I want to bring that back into something that you started about the whole being at home and being on the ocean front and the way you kids were raised. Okay. Because it's something I'd like to leave the audience and you and me with, and we could talk about it more next time. But you guys, we intentionally wanted you guys as children to have a time in your life where you had no TV, no computer that you could go to, and in watching that, and so you could have a period of your life where you were just communicating with your parents, communicating with your siblings, communicating with your cousins, and then one of the things that I told you the other day that was most profound, because for me it was an experiment, because I'd never been around anyone who had done that before. What was most profound was that you kids, and kids in general, any human being needs to draw on someone else's story. Mm-hmm. So if you put a kid in front of a TV, they're going to draw on whatever the story is that person who created that channel is wanting them to draw on.
Yeah. Same
on the computer. But if you take those things away, the human curiosity is such that when a real living person comes over, you're going to want to know their story, because that's how you're going to learn about the world. So what you guys learned very, very early on was, whether it was the lifeguards or other adults or other people around, you guys found that it became very natural and instinctive to engage people in conversations.
Yeah.
And my adult friends were so blown away by that, because most kids would, when adults would come around, would go in their room and get on their computer or their TV, and they wouldn't want to participate.
Wow,
The second thing that was really amazing about it is that when you guys did get to that age where you needed this, your own in-group socially, and you started playing soccer, your friends, and this is at, you guys started at 7, 8 years old, so 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, your friends were asking you guys to help them communicate with girls. Because it was easy for you, because you were used to communicating with anybody. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
So that's like a full huge circle that you're talking about, that is very, very exciting for me, because the thing that's exciting is that there's a lot of people who believe that technology is so controlled our lives that there's nothing we can do about it. And of course, I think that what you're talking about and what my work's talking about in terms of nature is there are things that we can do about it, and there are millions of people who are starting to have these connections and try to understand also how we can control more of the experience that we want and have more of the human-to-human engagement that we need. I think our time's kind of up. Is that what I'm getting from you?
9 minutes.
9 minutes left?
9 minutes.
Oh, cool. Okay, so
What?
do you have another question along that you wanted to ask, or can we keep going on something?
No, I mean, we can keep going. If you wanted to finish on that subject, I mean, I think it's a whole nother subject matter, but I wanted to talk a little bit about our names, but I know that that's such a long topic, but for anyone,
Not really.
Okay, so for one of the questions that I have, I think personally, or people will ask me, and it's usually
Yeah.
people that are in touch with their religion, because we didn't grow up religious at all, and at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
But my name's Eli, my brother's Joshua, my sister's Sarah, my cousins Jeremiah, Noah, Shoshana, Neshama, and then my little brother, his name is Lorian. I know personally where that came from and why. Actually, I don't know why you or named him Lorian. I know where his name came from. Why was that a decision that you made, and was that your decision, or was it you and Mama's decision?
Okay, so you want me to answer about Lorian, or do you want me to answer about the biblical names, or
Well,
just
both? Slightly on both, because I mean,
Okay.
you didn't raise us religious, right?
Well,
I don't even remember.
It's very interesting. So the audience might not, you obviously doesn't know this, but so I'm born from Catholic parents, and your mother was born from Tunisian Sephardic Jewish parents,
Right.
and we were born in 1962, so we were born in the age of experimenting with all kinds of things, and one of the experimentings was, do we want to follow the religion that we were born with? And neither one of us were really practicing our family religious background. So
Okay.
Your mother wasn't a practicing Jew, and I wasn't a practicing Catholic. Let's put it that way. I did go to Catholic high school.
Right.
I did have a Catholic high school girlfriend. I have to, like you said, it's a whole nother conversation on that. So there was definitely an awareness that we were not going to raise our children either Jewish or Christian in terms of going to a church or a synagogue. At the same time, my connection with Martin, my connection with nature, and my interest in religion and spirituality, and my connection to the Old Testament is pretty powerful, because in the Old Testament there is Moses finds God where? When he goes out on the mountaintop alone, and he sees a ball of burning fire. I mean, there's all kinds of thoughts that can just go into a child's mind or an adult's mind about that experience.
Right.
So the Old Testament is, in the beginning, there was darkness and a void, and then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So to me, the Old Testament is extremely powerful. And so when John and I'm a twin for those of you who don't know, and we married sisters, and so we had this little tribe, and there was a sense in which, and there is a sense that's very powerful with me, that the naming of a child is very important.
Okay.
So that's partly some of my recollections and memories, other than just an intuitive sense about biblical names. And then Lorian was this hiccup that came. So there was Joshua.
Lorian was the hiccup. Be careful what you say.
No. But I mean, it's true. I mean, parents go through those things where you're not. But the beauty. One of the most beautiful times in your mother's and my life was not thinking about planning children.
Right.
If I was going to be the Silverback, and if I was going to be connected to nature, and if and Martin was always asking me to give her what she needed, and I was kind of just following that, and so we boom had 3 children within like 2 years apart of each other, and then it was only after the 3rd, and what I said is a beautiful thing, because I think it's really, really the most empowering thing in the world, is to be with someone that you have chosen and it's chosen you, and you don't have to get into your intellect. You don't have to get into a calendar. You don't have to plan. You just allow something to happen. So for me, our family and what we created, is a magical thing. And then after 3, I'm like, wow, that's a lot, and so then we did think, yeah, that's enough. And then 5 years later, boom, Lorian came. Now, at that time, you guys were, let's see, 5, 3, no, you were already 5. Sarah was 7 and Joshua was 9. And I was I was reading so you didn't have TV, so my obligation was to read stories or tell stories to you guys, and we were reading The Lord of the Rings, and your mother, like me, fell in love with the language in The Lord of the Rings, and so Lothlorien is this beautiful paradisal place in The Lord of the Rings, and Lorien was the shortened version of Lothlorien, and your mother fell in love with that name. That's how your brother came to be.
Whoa, that's cool. I didn't even know that. I never even heard that before just now. So.
You didn't?
No. I knew you got the name from there, but I don't know why. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
she came
so
up
I
with
would.
It, or...
So I would read to. So
we
would all
actually.
Be in this collective nighttime. We're gonna read moment. And I would read, and one by one, you kids would nod off.
We'd fall asleep. I remember that. That's
and
so
then
funny.
Eventually your mother would fall asleep, and sometimes I would just kept reading because I had gotten into that so much. Uh-huh. But that's kind of where the names came.
Cool, dude.
Cool. Put your finger like that.
Right on.
So once again, thank you guys for joining us on the Joe Silverback Show. We're new to this. I am the Silverback. I am Joe Bunton, Joe Silverback, and this is the young buck Eli Bunton, who is helping me keep this show exciting and light and fun.
Cool.
And we'll see you guys next time.